August issue at the beginning of July. And if you've ever been a part of it before, you have an opportunity to tell your story a little bit more than you would with a traditional ad. So we put together what's called an advertorial. And so you get a chance to put together, a couple of paragraphs. This year, we're going to offer 3 different sizes. So you can do it in a quarter page, half page, or full page. And, tell your story, how you got started, who you are, what you love about business, because we believe that people will do business with people that they know, like, and trust, right? And so we're just starting to gather people who are interested in that. And the best way at this point, if you're interested in participating in it, is to go to our website, rwmagazine.com. And then there's a link right at the top that says advertise. And that is the page that has my schedule, where you can sign up for just a free consultation or meeting with me. I block a half an hour, but we don't need to use that whole entire time. And you can tell me a little bit about you, and I can tell you a little bit more about what being involved will look like. So we do have a link on our website right now that says business, and it doesn't lead anywhere right now, but I'm hoping that it will be a place where we can gather resources for women in business. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah. So Emily, anybody who's got a business can send in this listing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I should say that we're going to have several different levels. So you can have an advertorial on the inside of the magazine. You can also choose to have your picture on the cover. We'll have 28 spots for women who want to be featured on the cover. And then we'll also have a chance for people, if they just want a listing, we're selling a 4-line listing for $75, and then any business or nonprofit can get a 2-line listing for free. So we want it to feel inclusive. It is advertising, full disclosure, but we do want all businesses to feel like they can participate.
Okay. Thank you. So would you put the link in the chat for folks while we're doing this today? But thank you. So we're really excited to partner with Rochester Women's Magazine, because I think it's a natural partnering, right? So they're trying to promote women in business, and so are we. So it kind of makes a lot of sense for both of us. So thank you, Emily, for being willing to do that.
Thank you.
All right, so today we're going to talk about designing an adaptable business. And so it's a little bit different than we do when we have a panel and we just kind of hear a little bit about their business and how they've navigated a particular effort. In this particular case, we're going to talk about you and your business. And so we want to just kind of understand, what does it take when you have to shift things? What are all the different moving pieces and parts that kind of come into that? And so the way we've got this set up to do it today is that Amanda and I are coming out from behind the scenes a little bit. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce the concept and kind of talk you through the reason you have this particular piece of the canvas. And then Amanda is going to show it to you in a product service business, and then in a product business, and then in a service business, so that you can kind of see how it might relate to you. So we had thrown one in the chat. And the idea, what we'd like to see is that you could maybe even take it out, scribble all over it, and design your own business or product that you want to roll out that you're maybe not rolling out right now. So that would be what you could do with it while we're talking, rather than just listening. So, okay, so the business model canvas. I should say, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. And then if I don't see them, maybe Amanda will whack me over the virtual head and bring them to my attention. But so the idea with the business model canvas is, you know what you want to do, and you think you know who you're going to do it for, but there are a lot of other parts and pieces to that. And yet, if I said to you, fill out a business plan, that can be a little intimidating. It can also feel redundant if you're just rolling out a new product or service in an existing business that you've already created a plan for. And so the business model canvas is one of those one-pagers you can take out and think of it like the back of a napkin. and you are going to map out all your new ideas you have for a business. And it's done with 9 building blocks. And you can keep messing with it. You can erase it, start over again, do whatever you want. And so in that way, it's very useful. So allows you to create something new. It's easier to change, and it has 9 building blocks. Those are the things that I kind of want you to take away. This is what it looks like. You should have one that we sent you yesterday. I think they also threw one in the chat. This link will also take you there so that if you want to play around with it at a later date, you can do that as well. So when you think about this business model canvas, and the 9 building blocks are these 9 areas within the canvas, it has a front stage and a back stage. And by front stage, I mean those things to the right-hand side are things that your customers see, that the world sees about your business. Those things on the left-hand side are those things you have to do to make it happen, but aren't necessarily visible to everyone else. So it might be something that you are, you didn't even think about because you don't see it when you look at someone else's business that does the same thing. Okay. So when we're doing this and we're looking at it, the first part we're going to start with is value proposition. And that is the toughest thing because especially if you're not in business by yourself or there are other stakeholders involved, it can be hard to agree on what the value proposition is. So rather than just kind of taking that for granted, that's a part to spend a lot of time on. And then the other piece that we'll go through that I just want you to be thinking of is we have this idea that when we're starting a business or when we're rolling out a new product, everyone should be able to have it. We want to be inclusive. We want everyone to be able to take advantage of it. But what we end up doing is diluting it so far that no one ends up taking advantage of it. And then finally, there's this idea about unrealistic expectations about what you could make for money in it or what it's going to cost. Typically, people either undervalue what it's going to cost them to do it or what they can make doing it. So, all right, diving in, the first one, the value proposition. So this is how you're creating value. And the whole concept here is it may not be how you think you're creating value. And so it's a constant conversation between you and your customer for you to understand the value they're actually deriving from what you're bringing. And you may not be able to pivot to each customer. So you have to decide, am I going to have multiple value propositions for different types of customers? Am I going to try to make everybody happy kind of a thing? Or am I going to decide that this is my value proposition? And that can be because you are premier at what you do. So your performance is the value proposition, but it could also be because you're willing to tailor your service offering directly to each client. It can be because you make life easier for them. So within this concept and this construct that Strategizer has put out, you kind of look at it in the sense of, I'm going to bring something to the table. Is it relieving a pain someone else is already experiencing? Or is it actually creating a gain? It's probably not both. It's probably one or the other. And so which one is it and how am I managing that? You know, maybe, so I've always said that if you're a plumber, the value proposition is that you show up when you're called, right? You don't need much more than that. That makes you valuable to your clients. Whereas if you are selling real estate, it's probably your availability morning, noon, and night as they need you to be walking alongside them. So kind of those value propositions that you have to think about. When I think through this with something like WeForum, the first thing I think of is, I think that the value here might be that you enjoy networking and learning something. But if I take away one of those, you might no longer find it of value. And yet there are some who may only come for one of those. So how do I manage that well so that I am actually delivering what I think I want to deliver, what I think is needed, and still meet the needs of the customers? So we want to kind of look at what that looks like in different businesses. And hopefully you're thinking through how you're creating value in your own business. So I'm going to turn it to Amanda to talk about a couple of examples.
Okay. So I'm going to share throughout this 2 different businesses that I've started here in the community. One is a service-based business and one is a products-based business. They are 2 very, very different business models. So hopefully that will give you a pretty good overview of something that could apply to what you are doing. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Rochester Rising. This is now part of a nonprofit, but we're going to pretend here that it is a for-profit business because I think that's the most straightforward. So there are actually two value propositions for Rochester Rising, and we'll talk about why that's the case shortly. But one of the values or the gains that it's adding is ad space. So visibility to potential customers. And the other gain that it's adding is inspiration capital. So it's showcasing stories of entrepreneurs that look like some of the customer segment, have the same experience as some of the customer segment. So then adds that gain to them that if this person did it, I can do it too.
Should we go to the next one?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So in case you weren't familiar with what Rochester Rising is, I just want to explain each of these businesses very quickly. So Rochester Rising is an online storytelling platform that shares stories of Rochester entrepreneurs through articles and videos. So this is the value proposition here. So the gain would be, and I'm pointing on my screen, but realizing you are not seeing it. To advertisers, you'd have visibility where this like Collider logo is now. So you'd be very visible front and center on the web page, and you'd be visible to people coming to the web page who would be a different customer segment, but they'd be here for the inspiration capital. So they'd be here for the podcast, the articles, the stories of entrepreneurs. So that's how this value proposition is displayed. So we go to the next one, please. Okay, so the other business I want to talk about is Fresh Cola Farm. So this is a product-based business that I started with my husband a few years ago. So this has a very different value proposition, all gains. It allows people to support local. It allows people the gain of trying new things that they might not be familiar with, as in the gain of transparency, something that is not always present in the industry that we're in. And also we use what's called a bait product. This is not a bad thing. This just means that we try and get people familiar with our brand, with our products by offering free or deeply discounted services. And I'll explain why that's a vital part of our business model as we go forward. So next slide, please. So this is a value proposition for Fresh Cola Farm. So we are a family-owned small batch provider of industrial hemp products grown with intention and care. The value proposition here is our mission, the transparency that we want to advocate for in the education, and just so it makes sense to you all as we move forward, we have kind of two groups of products. One are kind of CBD based and the other are food based, so hemp seed products. So as far as the value proposition as well, there's a barcode on the products that people can click and can learn more about our story and the product testing. So that's also adding that transparency and showcasing that we are local. Another way to display the value prop. All right, next slide, please.
Okay. And so hopefully as we're giving you these examples, it gives you an idea of, you can say, oh, well, I fall more in line with a service kind of business or a product kind of business, and these are the types of things I can do. Amanda touched on this idea of a bait product, or what's sometimes called freemium, and you see this all the time. It's just this idea that you give some things away to your clients for free with the hope that later they'll find value in it enough that they will start purchasing from you. Much like Emily suggested with the listings in the directory, right? If you start getting people who come to your business because of her free listing that she provided you in the magazine, you might be tempted to go back and get a bigger ad and pay for it. And so that's kind of this freemium model. So we kind of do it, and it's putting a terminology with it. So you decide what the value is, and it's a conversation between you and the clients, because what you think is the value may not actually be the value. I suspect if I polled this group, Each person finds a little bit different nuanced value from the we form that causes them to come. But when you think about your customer segment, the top bullet, this is really more of this is the terminology, just so you have it and you can speak to it. When we think about mass market, that's saying that what you produce goes to everybody the same way. So if I write a book and I sell the book, that's mass market. I'm not changing the book for different types of people, right? Niche market, meaning that I'm only going after a very small segment of people and I'm willing to tailor my product to that very particular segment of people. Segmented means that I may have different types of clients who come to me for different reasons. So, Bethany might have people who come to her because they want to empower their team that they're working with. Other people might come to her because they want to learn about themselves and be a better leader. And so those are going to be different types of clients who are going to bring her different capacity to work with them in long-term, partnership, right? Diversified just means simply that you're looking to get a bunch of different client bases in case one dries up and goes away. So maybe Amanda's looking to have stores and also individuals who buy on the website and also people who are buying for other people, all of those different types of things. And a multi-sided platform, I'm going to guess most of you don't have or wouldn't get involved in, but basically that means something like Visa. So for Visa to be successful, they have to have stores that take Visa cards, and then they have to have people who are willing to get a Visa card and use it. And so they're a multi-sided platform and they need a lot of different parts. And that can fall apart very quickly. If you were producing VHS tapes, you needed people to produce VHS players and you needed people to buy VHS tapes. And when that market collapsed, you collapsed, right? So multi-sided platforms can be very tricky to manage. But you're also looking at your customer segment from the perspective of who is it? Age, demographics, geographic, socioeconomic factors, because that's also going to drive the value they get from you. So you're going to have to figure that out and kind of understand that customer story around that. And keeping in mind what Amanda said, that if you have multiple value propositions, you probably have multiple customer segments to manage. So for each one, you would want to do a different canvas.
Okay, so for Rochester Rising, we actually do have this multi-platform customer base. We have two very distinct customers, advertisers and users and consumers. These also have many different types of advertisers. There's many types of users and consumers, which we're not going to get into today because that's way too complicated, but this is an example of a multi-sided customer segment. So the advertisers are only there because the users, the consumers are there. Okay, next slide, please. And with Fresh Cola Farms, this is probably more of a standard segmented customer base. Again, this is two distinct groups coming there for different reasons. And like Christine said, ideally you'd have different business model canvases for each of these, but we have a group coming to the business seeking to relieve pain that they're experiencing. And there's multiple different customer segments in there. You can see some of the demographics here, kind of a 65 plus market, experiencing pain, maybe a 30 to 45 market, aged market that is looking to maintain an active lifestyle and starting to experience some pain in their lives. And we also have a large group of customers. Again, this is segmented as well, coming to the business, using the business model for health or wellness reasons.
Okay, so depending on who these customers are, that depends how you're going to connect with them. And again, a lot of these things intuitively, but when you put them out on the canvas, this is where you figure out what piece you maybe need to adjust. So you may have a business model, say you're with the bank or you're with an organization that really values customer service, and so they want you to be very hands-on with each customer. You have to think to yourself, what does the customer want? So we have been driven as a society to expect certain things from certain industries. So if we're buying a house, we expect somebody to go with us and handhold us through it. Um, Typically, the car industry was somebody going with you and walking with you and doing a test drive with you. And yet that did not resonate with enough customers that they're now pivoting their model so that you could buy the car without having to talk to anybody and have it delivered to your house. So it's an indicator of where the industry needs to decide if how they think they want to relate to their customers is actually how the customers want to be related to. So do they want that personal assistance from you? Or do they want to be able to serve themselves or be able to do it automatically somehow? And this whole idea of co-creation, where they want to be part of designing what they ultimately get, that can be something like, you go and you just, one person wants to buy a couch and their biggest value proposition is that they can take it home today. Someone else wants to be able to choose the fabric and style, and they're willing to wait for it because it's going to be just right. And so not each store is going to be able to cater to each type. But for some of you in the businesses that you're in, you may need to have two different ways to relate to customers because your customers want to be related to differently. So that's not any different than a store that allows you to buy online or in the store. But you understanding what the customer wants and being able to adapt to that can mean the difference between keeping them or not keeping them in the relationship.
So for Rochester Rising, I think the way the customer wants to be connected with is pretty straightforward. They expect to be connected with through kind of that acquisition process. So educating them about the ad packages that we have. And these are primarily the advertisers. It'll make sense a little bit later, but the users aren't really generating a revenue stream. So for most of this, we're going to focus on the advertisers. So for the advertisers, you develop a relationship during that acquisition process, educating them about what you're offering, starting to convert them into customers, and then ideally upselling them. So having a range of advertisement packages and then trying to get them into a higher one. We also did co-creation. So what that means in this sense is that we have our ad package listing. What's there doesn't always fall into what people are looking for or what their budgets are. So there's an opportunity there to create something that meets the needs of the customer. So for Fresh Cola Farms, a little different, but a lot similar as well. Similar acquisition process. So starting that relationship with the customer through, as we said, this bait product mainly. So this deeply discounted or free product to get them used to your service. And that's really important for this business model and others in this space because we knew that a lot of CBD companies particularly use that type of approach because there's 85% brand loyalty in that space. So if you can convert someone over to your brand and show them that you have value with this type of business, with this type of model, they stick with it. And I think that's something to know about the industries that you're in. So we're trying a little bit of a novel aspect to this business model. We're trying to use that same approach with more of the food-based products that we sell as well. Next, ideally after they try your product, you retain them, you've had them hooked. They like your business, they like your brand, they like your model, and you show that to them through this relationship. Because in this business model, we have to offer a lot of personal assistance because there's a lot of education required. It's a relatively new type of industry, especially in the US, so people have questions. And there are also people who just know what they want. So there's a self-service and automated relationship as well with some of the customer base.
So if you're following along, the first question was, how are you creating value? The second one is, who are you creating that value for? The third one is, what type of relationship does each of those customers expect? Now, this fourth question is, how do your customers want to communicate with you? So it's kind of a subset of the relationship they want to have. But this is really more about stores, online, wholesale. Do you want to drive them to you? When I say stores, this is your business front. Some people have a business relationship with someone for 10 years and never actually meet them face to face. Other people, that's the backbone of their relationship, and they meet them face to face every time they engage with them. So thinking through, and what I would encourage you to do, and I think what everybody is seeing during this time, is that the more channels you have, the more successful you can be. So if you are able to say, okay, I've always done really well with people walking through the door and buying my service or product or connecting with me personally, now is there a way for me to move some of it online, some piece or part of it online, that will allow people to access it at their own leisure when they need it, when they want it. So kind of figuring that out and knowing, really important to remember that we design our channels typically based on how we like to buy, thinking that we are our customer, that if we like it, that's what our customer will like. When in fact, the person who buys our products and services may not be like us very much at all. So their buying preferences might be vastly different. And so how do you pivot what you're doing in order to meet the needs of the person that you're working with? And that's really important when you have a model that you think is really good, right? So when you think it's really good, it's hard to then say, I want to adjust it for some types of clients. So are referrals considered a channel? Yes. So that comes to how do you get your clients? So yes, a referral would be a channel. And so how do you kind of create the way in which you're communicating with customers? I would tell you that a referral is kind of more of a way to get to that point where you're having the relationship. So it's a little bit cart horse there, but yes, I would put them in that category. Thanks for the question.
So with Rochester Rising, a service-based business, we used a variety of direct and indirect channels to get to customers. Direct through email marketing. For every business and initiative I've been a part of, this has been the most successful. Direct communication with your customer, as well as a sales force, which was me, the webpage, the podcast. These were all direct channels to the customer, ways they were relating with the brand, relating with the business model, as well as an indirect way through Collider, which is was at this point a co-working space for entrepreneurs. Now we're actually part of it as a nonprofit, but I think that could be a little bit of what Bethany was talking about too, as a referral. So that was kind of a referral network for us. So for this model, for a service-based business, it seemed to me that both the direct and indirect channels were as effective. Whereas with Fresh Cola Farms, if we can move to the next slide, the direct channels were always the most effective.
When you say direct, you mean talking directly to the customer?
Exactly, the ones that we are in control of. So maybe that'll be a little bit more clear here. So with Fresh Cola Farms, we had a variety of direct and indirect channels we used to interact with the customer. Direct were ones originating from our organization, our business, and indirect were from partners or from other entities in the community. And hopefully that will make a little bit more sense here. So, so there was a question about newsletters. So that was what I meant by direct email marketing is the newsletter. So for Fresh Cola Farms, online was one of the channels. We controlled our own website, and we also were listed through the Rochester Makers Market. So that was an example of an indirect channel. So we didn't have control of it, but we were on it. Direct email marketing, newsletters, highly, highly effective. We also use social media, both our own to connect with customers as well as through partners, which was also highly, highly effective. Through partner organizations, for example, the Rochester Makers Market did a lot of promotion for our product. And we were also part of a free giveaway. So another kind of bait product was highly, highly effective to reach customers that we weren't able to reach prior. In-person markets were highly effective. Again, that's direct. And then retail locations are an indirect channel for our customers. And in this case, with a product-based business, the direct channels were more effective for us than the indirect channels using this business model.
So yeah, so some of the things around that, and this idea, like Tawanda is going to be relaunching, and we've had a couple of sessions on social media and how to use that. And one of the things that has really struck me is some of you are really good at social media posting. Some of you are really good at vlogging, the video kind of thing that you do. Others of you can write. And so a blog or newsletter makes a lot of sense. Crystal's asking about how often do you send them? I know that the industry standard is to try to do it on a set schedule, whether that's once a week or every 2 weeks or once a month. Once a month, you drop off of their radar typically, but it is industry dependent a little bit. Some industries, especially if you're trying to tap into a younger demographic, a consistent, like every couple of days, actually draws them in and shows up on their feed. And if you're trying to be on social media. So a real question, and Bethany kind of brings this up, is are you doing it to attract new customers, or are you doing it to kind of feed your current customers, or are you trying to make it attractive because only current customers get the newsletter? So I think those are all strategies you can use, and depending on your industry, some are going to be more effective than others. But these are all different channels that you're using to communicate with your client. And I think the key there is that not one of them is right or wrong, but you'll have to figure out what you can do. I was talking to somebody who said, I was going to do a blog, and then I realized I don't have that kind of time or patience to write the blog, but I can whip out my phone and do a 5-minute video kind of vlog and throw it up on my social media on a consistent basis. So for me, that works better. And yeah, I think there are a lot of people who are getting kind of overwhelmed by social media. So if there's other ways that you can do it, I would tell you that some demographics are going to respond differently to different things. I mean, we see a dramatic difference in the demographic on Facebook versus Instagram most of the time. And I see the Facebook demographic trying to get onto Instagram, some with more and less, help, right? And yes, I would agree with Tawanda that that's where those experts really are quite fabulous. There are people who do that quite well. And if you remember, that's what Beth Finbo said when she was with us, that she hired somebody to do her social media, and like her sales went up 10 times from what they had been before. So the end of the front stage is what you actually can make, what you can bring in for revenue. So what are the customers willing to pay for? I think you'll find some people will try to create something that's for a fee and people won't pay it. But if they give it away for free, people come. And so you have to figure out they'll pay for this, but this they want for free. And what are those things that you can do for people for free that will attract them? If you're Kayla and you have an accounting firm, there's not a lot you can give away for free, right? You need to do people's taxes. But maybe you can give away free tax advice through a blog or something like that, but you can't necessarily do the services. You might be able to make one component, like if you get your taxes done here, we'll do your $9.90 for you for the whatever it is, but really you have to figure that out industry by industry. And so once you figure out what they're willing to pay for, you have to figure out what you're going to charge. And that's a whole topic unto its own, as you all know, where you have to benchmark against the industry and what are other people charging. In some industries, it's much easier to figure that out than others. Consulting can be one of the toughest ones to figure out because it really depends on what the avenue you're consulting in, who the clients are, and the type of pocketbooks they have, and then your, kind of your reputation. Those things all drive it. And then, are you going to charge for a specific product, a service, or for a usage fee to have access to you and your brain? Is it a subscription? Subscription models can be the most valuable way for you with low overhead to continually bring in new clients. And do you have something you can rent, lease, or license? Those are the types of things that can create the revenue streams. Turn it to Amanda.
Yeah, so for Rochester Rising, again, we had these 2 distinct customer segments, 2 value propositions, and also 2 revenue streams. So the users, people who were just coming to the website, listening to the podcast, they're not paying anything. So it's free. And it's free because there's advertisement from that other customer segment, that other value proposition that's driving a different customer segment in, that's only there because the users are there. So for our advertisers, we had two different revenue streams. One was fixed menu pricing. So we had a standard list of advertisement packages. However, it was priced differently based on customer segment. So for example, we didn't really go into the different types of advertisers that we had, but for example, there was a lower price for a startup than there was for a large organization, just based on the business model and based on the mission. We also use a dynamic in negotiation pricing model for the advertisements. That goes back to a little bit of that co-creation, the type of relationship that the customer wanted to have. So we had this fixed menu pricing. Sometimes what the customer was looking for was not on there. So we'd work with them to put together a dynamic package that meted their needs and their budget. For Fresh Cola Farms, again, we primarily rely on this bait and hook business model. So part of the revenue stream is first interacting with that customer through purchase of a bait product. For the bait product, we use dynamic pricing. Items are deeply discounted at certain times. That's a limited amount of time to get people to reduce the risk of trying your brand. And again, like I said, there's 85% brand loyalty in this space. That's something we knew. So we know if we get people to try our product, there's an extremely high likelihood that they're going to stick with it. And then the other stream is those repeated purchases through hooking the customer. And so this is a pretty traditional asset sale revenue stream. So you're selling a product, you're getting money for that product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and you'll see as we're going through this, you've probably spent time thinking about all of these questions for your business model. This is just more around if you're going to try to roll out a new service offering, or maybe there's one that you weren't really thinking through. And so this can change the dynamic and you can shift through a lot of the other ones at the same time. So who are your key partners, suppliers, and resource providers in order to make this happen? It might be the people who package your product. It might be the people who supply the product that you're selling. I think about in terms of if you have a book, it's getting it sold. So you need bookstores, or you need Amazon online, or you need some other way for people to get your book. If you have a coffee business like Crystal, you need to know who's going to actually carry your product, who's going to allow you to be in their stores, what coffee shops will put it out there. So those partners become make or break in some of these businesses. In others, your partners almost look like your customers because you're co-creating with them. So that's not to separate them out completely, but to recognize their space in all of this. Do you have joint ventures or strategic partnerships? Because if you don't, that could be a piece that's missing in your business. So is there someone you can join forces with that would actually increase your business and allow you to do more? I think about the relationship that Kayla has with Natalie, and I don't know how much of it's business, how much of it's personal, but those are businesses that kind of naturally can create partnerships because they're in the financial sector, right? So when we think through all of those things, there are probably other people that you can partner with and create some sort of joint venture or strategic partnership with. And I'm going to let Amanda talk through that.
Yeah. So I think in a service-based business, it's a little bit trickier to think of key partners like Christine was just saying. I would say for Rochester Rising, the main key partner was Collider. Again, this opened up a network and it really reduced the risk or uncertainty of the brand, especially when it was brand new. Like no one knows what you're doing and you don't have any trust when you're new. So that helped to reduce the risk and uncertainty to deliver that value proposition, especially to the advertisers.
Mm-hmm.
For Fresh Cola Farms, it was very different. And I think this starts to highlight, or not starts, continues to highlight a key difference between a product and a service-based business. Oh boy, now we have confetti raining from the sky.
I don't know where that came from.
Can we go I don't know what happened. I'll just talk.
That was
Here we
interesting.
go.
There you go.
So
It was just
a
to see if
lot of,
everybody was awake.
yeah, no more confetti. A lot of key partners were part of a peer network group. Like Christine was saying, this really helps to maximize the visibility and the opportunity that we have. We've started to collaborate with somebody in that peer group to make a jam. Trail Creek Coffee Roasters, so I have listed here as another key partner, is in that group as well. So it really opens up opportunities to make new products, expand market. Other key partners. So for us, for this business model, key partners are what keep the business going. So Trail Creek Coffee Roasters, we collaborated with them on a product. We have a hemp seed coffee blend with them. They're also our commercial kitchen space. If we didn't have them, we would not have a product. In the business that we have, seed suppliers are also key. If we did not have key partners, trusted partners that have a trusted product for us to even start with, we've got nothing to build on. So in this business model, those key partners are essential for making that business. Whereas in the service-based industry that I talked about, that wasn't as big a part of the business model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really just gives you an opportunity to tap into a different customer base and expand. Okay, so then what do you actually have to do to deliver the value proposition, right? So some of it may be production, problem solving. Do you have a platform like a website? Is it through a network, or is it just actually direct to customer action? Sometimes it's very easy for us to say the activities we deliver, we buy coffee, we roast coffee, we package coffee, we sell coffee. But what about all the things that are involved in your production and the infrastructure around it? You know, if you're thinking through the Rochester Women's Magazine, that's more of you need a network, and you have to figure out how to solve problems like what is it that people really want to hear about. And so all of those things are activities that are taking up your time. And so you have to figure out how those, if you don't lift them out, then you don't allocate the time for them, and then they don't happen in the amount of, you know, that you don't give them their due. And so then you don't spend the time on them that you need to spend on them, or think about what they're costing you from a cost perspective.
So for Rochester Rising, for the business model, these key activities were the most important part of the model. So maintaining the platform, which includes the physical platform, as well as what Christine was saying, you know, working on this network, understanding what they're wanting, developing that content, writing and producing the content. Those are the most important things to this model. If those don't happen, then you don't have anything. And then distribution. So getting that content out there, which we primarily did mainly through email, through newsletters, and through social media, but that wasn't as effective.
You know what that reminds me of is you spend 2 hours a night with your kid doing homework, and then they forget to turn it in the next day. And you're like, seriously? All of the activity is important, not just some of it.
Yep. Key activities for Fresh Cola Farms, very, very different in a product-based industry. This was largely infrastructure dependent, including, you know, the planting, harvesting, production, fulfillment. And in this business, making that infrastructure, making that process as efficient as possible is really key for this business model, as well as maintaining the platform, the website. Most of our sales are direct through the website, so it's important that that is functional and receiving orders, as well as education. So this is a business and a model that requires a lot of education to go along with the product. So that's important that we make that time to do that.
Yeah, and Bethany brings up a good point. If you're in a service industry, especially, one of those activities needs to be customer maintenance, right? Relationship building around that. Okay, so key resources. We're kind of coming towards the end of this. So what do you need to make that happen? And not just thinking in terms of physical, but intellectually, who needs to be on your team to do this well? Is there something you want to do, but you don't have the right resources, like the social media piece? So what kind of intellectual capital do you need to tap into? What kind of human capital? Funny when Beth was on Shark Tank, she knew that she needed to ramp up her team to respond to the sales of the Busy Baby mat afterwards. And rather than hire people, she tapped into her network and said, who can come out and help me pack for the weekend? And so in that case, she tapped into human capital on a short-term basis. But it was a great way to say, I need these extra resources for this period of time. It doesn't make sense for me to hire. Can I tap into my network a little bit to make that happen? But thinking through your resources, it's one of the ways in which most new startups underestimate what it's going to cost them to stay in business for the first couple of years, those resources that they have to do.
For Rochester Rising, I think, again, for a service-based business, the key resources were pretty straightforward. The website, which we talked about before, and that's an example of a physical resource. As we've been talking about, the relationships were a definite key resource. That human capital didn't have that relationship, that trust in the community, the business would not be possible. As well as the brand. I think the brand here was a huge key resource. Might not have been as important in the beginning, but continuing and building that trust and having it stand for trust has been really important. And then with Fresh Cola Farm, a lot of similar but very different resources. The brand, again, I'd say is the most important key resource here, being known for transparency, trust, family owned and local. We have a lot of physical equipment because of this type of business. The website, we're heavily reliant on a distribution system. We use the postal service, which also could be a key partner. Growing harvesting knowledge. This is an industry that not much is known about, so that's very precious to us, and we don't share that readily because it is a key resource. It's an advantage that we have. And I'd also say that's probably a key partner as well. We do have a grower that we utilize a revenue sharing plan for. Because we're brand new, we can't pay a salary. So that's what we have to offer. Again, as well as relationships, also a huge, one of the most important key resources here. The growth that we've been able to have with the business model is because of the pre-existing relationships that we have had in the community.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the final piece of this, and this is all when you hear the term design thinking and how you can use metacognition and think about what you're thinking about, that's what this is all around. So this is saying that, yes, you're thinking about these things, but how are you thinking about them? And can you map it out so that when you think through each of these processes, it's with deliberation. So the final one is cost structure, and that's, can you do any economies of scale or scope? Can you make partnerships that reduce your costs? And then what are those costs? How are they structured? And really mapping that out correctly. And then deciding whether it's cost-driven, value-driven, fixed, or variable. Because that all, and without getting into that way too deep, that's all going to drive your success long-term. If you have too many sunk costs that are fixed that you can't do anything about, that's really detrimental in a time where your sales go down. But if you can keep your costs variable as much as possible to what you're bringing in, you have a longer chance of survival, better chance of survival.
So Rochester Rising and Fresh Cola Farms, based on being a service or product-based industry, I think this is where the largest difference comes across in the cost structure. So Rochester Rising is very cost driven. The business models focused on maintaining the leanest possible cost structure. So there are a lot of fixed costs and they don't change. So like increasing the number of stories, increasing the number of podcasts doesn't really change anything. So it doesn't change how much it costs to maintain the website. Might change customer acquisition costs a little bit, but office supplies, podcasting, photography equipment, the costs are pretty low, but they don't really change in relation to how much output you can put out, which is pretty consistent for a service-based business. Mm-hmm. Fresh Cola Farms is more of a value-driven business. It's based on economies of scale. So like I said in the beginning, infrastructure is so important. the more efficient we can be with our time, with our resources, with what we have, and the more output we can get, the better things are. So the more revenue we can get, our cost per unit decreases as our production increases. So in this model, this business model, we have pretty high fixed cost that can be leveraged through scale and volume. So we have a lot of licensing fees, a lot of testing fees, a lot of seed fees, as well as branding and marketing that we have to pay for, processing, manufacturing, distribution, maintenance of our platform and infrastructure in general, meaning our website and all our equipment and things like that. And also, if you remember, this is this bait and hook product or model. So, we're subsidizing our bait product. So we're losing or not making any money when we're getting people, converting people to our customer, to become our customer base.
Mhm. Yeah, and for some of you, rent may be your biggest fixed cost that you keep, rent and salaries. And so the more business you can bring through, the more you can dilute those costs. Okay, so that was it. That's the business model canvas. I'm a big fan. I feel like it's a great tool for thinking through a lot of the questions that you have around your business. We don't spend enough time as business owners thinking this way. We have an idea, we want to do it, and we start executing on it, but we don't think through all these different pieces that influence it. So I would encourage you to spend some time with this, and any individual thing you're thinking about bringing to your business or changing about your business, mapping it out like this over a cup of coffee or wine can really pay off at the end. So Business Model Generation is the book by Strategizer that it's it gives you, it's this thick, but it's fun, and it's I can actually show it to you. This book is, it's like a cartoon book in a way, but it really thinks through all the ideas in a great format. So I would encourage you to try any of these books and get some more information on this. So that's it. This is next time. So we've got 3 wonderful ladies coming in to talk to us about e-commerce next time around. So Amaryllis Henderson, if you don't know her, she's amazing. She runs Watercolor Devo, and she started off on an Etsy shop, and now she's on Amazon, and she's just really got some wonderful products, and she's diversified online. Diana, who took over Dobby's and shut down the physical locations and then turned it into a e-commerce business where she rents a kitchen, commercial kitchen, and makes the product and you pick it up. And then the Nordic Shop, and if you don't know, they were in the Post Bulletin not too long ago. They increased their sales exponentially by pivoting to online during COVID. So my hat's off to them. And so these 3 ladies are going to come next month and share with us kind of the opportunities that exist out there if we're able to move some aspect of the business online. So that was kind of a once around the world for the business model canvas. I appreciate the questions that we got in the chat, and I appreciate everyone's participation. I hope it was interesting for you. I know this is different than what we often do, but hopefully it's valuable as well. So let me know if there's anything that we should follow up with. Shoot me an email if there's something that you have a question on after that. Yes, the book titles. Amanda maybe can throw that screenshot in the chat or something, or I can. And then we would like to know what types of things you like. Like I said, there's definitely different customers that come to WeForum and have different desired needs. So I know some of you find it interesting to have this type of content, and others would not as much enjoy this. So let us know what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like to see coming up in the future. And we would be happy to do that. All right, any last comments, questions? I shouldn't have you on the other screen. It looks like I'm looking up in the sky. All right, ladies, thank you so much for attending and taking the morning with us. I appreciate it very much, and I hope you found it valuable. And thanks again, Emily, for your partnership, and I hope people jump in and become part of the directory. So, all right. Bye, ladies.
Thank you. Thanks, Christine. Thanks, Amanda.
No problem.
Nicely done.